I want to thank the ranking member for his cooperation and coordination in preparing for this bipartisan markup. I know we'll continue to have differing positions on policy approaches during this Congress, especially when it comes to the border, but protecting the homeland, improving DHS is our charge, and I believe all the bills being considered today make strides in achieving that goal, and I deeply appreciate his help and partnership. I'd also like to speak for just a moment on the bills offered by my colleagues. The Unmanned Aerial Security Act and the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Extension Act are timely and important pieces of legislation that I believe all members of the committee should readily support. H.R. 1501 is an important measure that would prohibit DHS from acquiring or contracting for drones manufactured by China or our other adversarial nations. The bill passed the committee and the House with broad support last Congress, and I commend Vice Chair Guest for his consistent leadership in standing up to CCP attempts to exploit our homeland. Additionally, H.R. 3224 extends the sunset of DHS's Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction, or CWMD, office past its current expiration at the end of this year. I thank Rep. D'Esposito for his attention to this important office, and particularly appreciate the provisions requiring transparency and a plan to improve morale from the Assistant Secretary of CWMD. I also support the measure offered by Rep. Jackson Lee and Rep. Payne and appreciate their bipartisan approach in incorporating feedback from our side. Lastly, I'm proud to lead another bipartisan measure today, H.R. 3286, focusing on improving our cybersecurity. In late 2021, a Chinese researcher discovered a new vulnerability in a widely used piece of open source software called Log4j. The vulnerability allowed hackers to access and control devices remotely, creating cyber risk in millions of devices worldwide. Cyber professionals called this vulnerability the most significant they had seen in their careers. We're still responding to that hack today. This vulnerability showcased the risks that open source software can introduce to our networks and digital assets. We were fortunate that the researcher who discovered the vulnerability reported it to the foundation that maintains Log4j rather than to the Chinese regime, as is required under China's so-called national security law. Without that researcher's brave action, the CCP could have exploited the vulnerability for their gain without us even knowing. Open source software is the bedrock of our digital ecosystem. Virtually every computer relies on it, and it is an inextricable and valuable part of our digital infrastructure. Open source software is free, distributed widely, and is maintained and refined by a trusted community of individuals and organizations. The collaborative nature of open source software offers tremendous opportunity for innovation and economic growth, but it comes with a unique set of security challenges as highlighted by the Log4j vulnerability response I mentioned. H.R. 3286, the Securing Open Source Software Act of 2023, which is the House companion to a bill sponsored by Senator Peters and Senator Hawley, is a direct response to the challenges we experienced in the Log4j vulnerability and aims to address security risks posed by other open source software components. The bill authorizes a number of activities at CISA and requires the agency to evaluate and better position federal agencies to securely use open source software. Specifically, it requires CISA to develop a framework to help the federal government manage its own risk. It's important to note, too, that this bill preserves CISA's position as a voluntary partner to critical infrastructure and does not authorize any additional regulatory authority to CISA or any other agency. Open source software is a vital part of our economy. As one of the largest consumers of open source software, the federal government must lead by example by improving how it manages its risk stemming from the use of open source software. I'm offering an amendment in the nature of a substitute to the bill that will make minor technical and other changes. I thank Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection Chairman Garbarino and Ranking Member Swalwell